Hi and welcome back to my channel. I'm Elise and I hope you're doing so good today. It's a special day because it is my first ever book haul on my channel. Last month I was really good, didn't buy any books. This month I bought a lot of books. I went crazy. I bought so many books. There's so many books here. So buckle up because it's gonna be a long one. And hopefully you find some books to add to your TBR today. Hopefully you find some new ones that you haven't seen people talk about or some old favorites. So we'll go ahead and dive in. The books are going to be separated out into books I bought myself that we'll start with, then books that were gifted to me, and then we'll go into library books because I did check out a few from the library recently as well, so I'll include those here. And let's go ahead and dive in. The first books I bought myself this month, I bought the beginning of the month and I've already read all of these actually, and those are the next 3 volumes in the Spy Family series from where I left off. So that is volume 5, 6, and 7, and these are by Tatsuya Endo, and they are published by Shonen Jump, and they're translated from the Japanese, let me check who it is, by Michelle Tyman. And it was actually very difficult to find the translator of these. I'm not sure why that is. I don't know if that's a manga thing or not, but I had to really scour to figure out who had translated these into English. So I'm not sure, but they're very good. These I've talked about numerous times because I've already read, 8 or 7 volumes in the series, but it's about a spy, a telepath, and an assassin that all become a family, and none of them knows what the other one is, so they're trying not to get found out while still trying to accomplish their goals. So it's very good. It's a great beginner manga if you're not into manga yet. Those are the first manga that I've ever read, and I've really loved them. So that is those. The next book that I bought has a gorgeous cover, and that is Carnality, and this is by Lena Wolf, and this is translated from the Swedish, I believe. Yeah, translated from the Swedish by Frank Perry. Look at how gorgeous that is. And this book really caught my attention just from the blurb. It was like a featured shelf at my local indie, and I'll read some of it to you here. So this is about a Swedish writer who flies to Madrid and meets this man who apparently has like a very intriguing story to tell, and he agrees that the writer can tell his story as long as she gives him a place to sleep and provides him food. So they do this, and she starts going down this rabbit hole. I think at one point there's like a woman involved who seems to be able to perform miracles. And I think it's questioning things about spirituality. I think it's learning about kind of like the seedy underground of Spain and similar themes related to that. So I'm very intrigued about this. This sounds very fast-paced. We shall see. And this is published by Other Press. So that is Carnality. Okay, next one is Where the Wild Ladies Are, and this is by Aoko Matsuda, and this is translated from the Japanese by Polly Barton, and this is published by Soft Skull Press. And this is a collection of short stories, and I'll read you a few of what it says they are on the back. So it says there's a busybody aunt who disapproves of hair removal, a pair of door-to-door salesmen hawking portable lanterns, a cheerful lover who visits every night to take a luxurious bath, a silent house caller who babysits and cleans while a single mother is out working. In this witty, exuberant collection of linked stories, Aoko Matsuda takes the rich, millennia-old tradition of Japanese folktales, shape-shifting wives and foxes, magical trees and wells, and wholly reinvents them. I won't read the rest of the book because it's pretty long, but these sound really good. I love interlinking short story collections, but I don't find many of them, so I'm very intrigued about this one. I think this is also going to be exploring themes of like what it means to be a woman as well, which I always really appreciate. So that is this one. This one also has a beautiful cover. I love the like teal and orange together. Okay, the next one is Serve the People, and this is by Jan Lianke, and this is translated from the Chinese by Julia Lovell, and this is published by Black Cat. And this one is, well, I should start by saying this one actually got banned in China, and it's hilarious. There's actually a blurb on the back, I don't know if you can see that, that's by the Chinese Central Propaganda Bureau, saying that they banned it. So that, I'll read you the ban blurb. So it says, this novel slanders Mao Zedong, the army, and it's overflowing with sex. Do not distribute, pass around, comment on, excerpt from it, or report on it. So this is a kind of like scathing review of the Chinese politics and politicians during the time, and that's why it got banned. So it satirizes like real people. So this one is following the wife of a powerful like commander in communist China, and she starts having an affair with one of her servants, and I think she puts out a sign that says serve the people, and when she removes the sign, that means that the servant is supposed to come and see her while her husband is away. So I'm really curious about this one. I know it's supposed to be funny, so I'm excited. This sounds very good. Okay, the next one is Portrait of an Unknown Lady, and this is by Maria Gainza, and this is translated from the Spanish by Thomas Bunstead. And this one sounds like a romp. So this one follows an art forger who is renowned and does amazing forgeries of this one artist in particular, a painter, Mariette Lidis, and they're an Argentinian painter, and nobody can tell that these forgeries are actually forgeries, and they're being circulated in Argentina. And then this art critic decides to play detective and try and figure out who the forger is, and the art critic becomes obsessed with finding out who the forger is. I think this is kind of exploring what it means to have authenticity in art, and is really exploring the validity of art, which I think is very interesting. This one I will be reading next month. Look forward to reading that for a video that I'm doing. And this one is published by Catapult Books. The next book is Dead Souls, and this is by Sam Riviere, I think is how you pronounce it. And this also has a stunning cover. Look at that. And this is by Catapult Books as well. And this is similar to the last book, and I'll be reading these in the same video. This is about a poet who basically has a scandal, a plagiarism scandal, and they're talking to the unnamed narrator of this book, and the poet is kind of describing their rise and fall in the literary world, and then this is exploring themes about, you know, plagiarism, what it means to have professional feuds, affairs, lots of stuff going on in this one, so I'm very intrigued, and I'm excited to be pairing it with Portrait of an Unknown Artist. So that is Dead Souls. Those are all the brand new books that I bought this month. Now I'm going to shift over to the used books that I bought. So I made a trip to the used bookstore as well, and I got 6 books there, I believe. The first one is The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, and I have The Fire This Time it's a collection of essays by Jesmyn Ward. I have it over on my shelves, but I wanted to read this one first before I read that one. I might even read them both together. So I picked this one up, and this matches like all the new editions that I have of James Baldwin's work. So this consists of 2 letters that are written at the centennial anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, and it's basically showing the like terrible legacy of racism that's still happening today in the country, or at the time that it was written. but also still happening today. So I'm sure this will be great. It's very short, and I do want to read this before I read the new edited essays that I have. So interested in picking this one up, and this is by Vintage. All right, the next one is The Lonesome Bodybuilder, and this is by Yukiko Matoya, and this is translated by the Japanese by Asa Yoneda. And this is a short story collection, and this has 11 stories, and it focuses on individuals who, it says, lift the curtains of their ordinary homes and workplaces and are confronted with bizarre, grotesque, and fantastic things. So I do think this will be pretty surreal. I've wanted to read this one for a very long time, so when I saw it at the used bookstore, I picked it up right away, and I'm excited to see what that one has. Next one is Saint X, and this is by Alexis Shaken, I think is how you pronounce her name. I looked it up, and I think that's how you pronounce it. And this is published by Celadon Books. And I think this is somewhat of a literary thriller. This book has sort of been haunting me. I've thought about picking it up for so long, and I've seen it a number of times at the bookstore and haven't pulled the trigger. And I was just in the mood for a plotty book when I saw this, so I decided to finally pick it up. And this follows Claire, whose sister disappears on the last night of their family vacation on the fake Caribbean island of St. X. And a couple days later, Allison's body is found, and 2 local employees at the hotel that they're staying at are arrested for the crime. But the evidence doesn't really seem like it matches up to those people doing it, and the story kind of enters the news and becomes this big mystery that doesn't seem to ever get solved. And then years later, there's some type of encounter that Claire has that brings the case back up again. So this sounds very intriguing. It sounds like it will be really fast-paced, and I'm interested in reading something like that soon. So I think this will do the trick. The next book I got was Fight Night by Miriam Taves, and this is published by Algonquin Books. And the blurb of this one really got me. I haven't read Miriam Taves before, although I know she's pretty prolific. I'll read the end of the blurb, which says, alternating between the exuberant, precocious voice of young Swiv and her irrepressible, tenacious grandma, Fight Night is a love letter to mothers, grandmothers, and all the women who are still fighting, painfully, ferociously, for a way to live on their own terms. I think this sounds great. I know this follows 3 generations, so a grandmother, a daughter, and a granddaughter, and I'm really interested to see what she does with a generational story like that. So that is Fight Night. The next book is The Guide by Peter Heller, and this is published by Knopf. And this book is a COVID-related book, and it takes place after a pandemic, and the only safe place where you don't have to wear a mask anymore is this resort, and only rich people can afford to go there. So I think this is going to have a lot to do with class. I think this is going to have a lot to do with like the climate and a little bit of like sci-fi fiction. And I did read The River by Peter Heller, and I did enjoy it. I think he writes nature really well, and so I'm curious to see what this is about. I haven't read very much pandemic fiction, or nonfiction for that matter, only a few things here and there. So I'm curious to like fully dive in, and I think this will be a good one for that. All right, and the last of the books that I bought myself this month is The High House by Jessie Greenglass, and this is published by Scribner. And this book I've been wanting to read for a while. There's been a couple of reviews of this that have been very glowing, and it seems like it might be up my street. I also have the audio of this checked out, so when I saw it, I figured I would pick it up. And this one is about a climate scientist that has transformed their summer house into like an ark, basically, and they're thinking that the end of the world is coming. So it's following them and their family, and I think some friends who make their way to what they call the High House, which is the Ark. And then slowly all of them start living together in this new kind of like community. And it's about what happens when they're all put together. And I think it is looking at themes of parenthood and survival, and kind of what it means to be a community. So I'm very intrigued about this, heard great things. I'm excited to see what I think of it. All right. And now I'm going to go over the gifted books. So I had 3 books gifted to me by my lovely mother-in-law, and she mostly reads thrillers, so which I don't read very often. I like thrillers, but I don't often want to pick them up, but I do still enjoy them. So she sends me all the ones that she reads and she enjoys. She passes them along to me, so I'm very appreciative of that. And these 3 I think are like pretty big thrillers from last year. The first one is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave, and this is published by Simon & Schuster. And I think this won the Goodreads Choice Awards in the thriller category last year. I think this is also historical fiction. Oh, something fell out of it. This fell out of it. Cute. So this, I believe, is about a woman whose husband disappears, and he leaves her a note, and it says protect her, and he's talking about their daughter. I don't think she's their biological daughter, but they've been raising her. And then I think you're slowly unfolding the story of like why this girl needs protecting and how they came to become a family. So it sounds pretty interesting. I don't read a lot of historical fiction either, so this will definitely be out of my wheelhouse, but I'm glad that I have it to pick it up if I want it. The next one is Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins, and this is published by St. Martin's Press, and this is the Book of the Month edition. My mother-in-law gets Book of the Month books. And this one, I believe, is supposed to be an And Then There Were None retelling by Agatha Christie. I have heard very mixed reviews about this, so I don't know when I'm gonna get to this. If it lingers on my shelves too long, I might get rid of it. I've read And Then There Were None, and I enjoyed it a lot. I didn't love it. I gave it 4 stars, so I really enjoyed it, but didn't love it. It wasn't an all-time fave, but it is my favorite Christie I've read so far. So this could be intriguing. It does take place in the summer, so it might be interesting to read it in the summer. But yeah, that's Reckless Girls. And then the last one I will read, and that is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, and this is published by William Morrow. And I did read The House Guest, and I enjoyed that one. There are a few tropes that I didn't love in that one, but overall I thought the plot was really good. I know some people also didn't love that book, but I did. So I think I will enjoy this. This one follows a girl who travels to Paris to see her brother. She goes to his apartment and he's not there. And her neighbors all seem very suspicious, or I guess his neighbors all seem very suspicious in this apartment complex. And so I think she's uncovering secrets of all these neighbors while also trying to figure out what happened to her brother. So that sounds intriguing to me. I think I've heard that this one is slightly like slower paced, like not a bunch of thrills and chills, which I'm actually okay with in a thriller. I don't need it to be like nonstop action, fast paced. So that is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, and thank you to my wonderful mother-in-law for sending those my way. Okay, now we're into the library books. I'm gonna pull this stack in front of me, and there are 5 books here. The first one I've checked out from the library before and then haven't gotten to it in time, which is kind of ridiculous because it's so short, but that is Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss, and this is published, all these are going to be covering the publisher, all the library stickers. This is published by FSG. I have multiple Sarah Moss books that I haven't read, Elise, why? But I have heard that this one is very good. This has some spooky vibes, and I think it's supposed to be pretty dark. So this says, a feminist fable, mythic and timely, asks, how far have we come from the primitive minds of our ancestors? That's good enough for me. That is good enough for me. And I know that this involves like some ancient ghost walls. So like there are actual ghost walls in this book. So I'm intrigued about this. I don't know if I'm gonna get to all these library books this month. We shall see. The one that I am for sure putting on my TBR though is Mrs. March by Virginia Fato. And this one is, I think, supposed to be like a suspense novel. I don't think it's a thriller. It's just like a psychological suspense. And this is about Mrs. March, whose husband is a writer. And one day she goes to the store and the cashier says like, oh, what do you think of your husband's books? And she has never read any of her husband's books, hasn't been interested, but she does know that the current book, the main character is supposed to be very unlikable, and the woman at the store says that she thinks the main character is based off of her. And that sends her spiraling, and she starts becoming obsessed with figuring out if it is supposed to be inspired by her and what her husband thinks of her. I think she really starts questioning that relationship, and she kind of goes out of control a little bit. So I'm really curious about this one. I will be reading this one in August. August. So that one will be coming up. And this one is published by Liverlight. Next one is a popular one, and that is Matrix by Lauren Groff. And this is published, this is published by Riverhead Books. And this one takes place in the 1800s. It follows a nun who I think has like deep passion for the nunnery and is trying to kind of make it all that she dreams it could be. And I think she's like very efficient and logical as a main character. So I'm curious about this. The time frame is honestly what I'm most curious about. Like, I'm into it. I want to read it. So that is Matrix. The next one, I do really want to read this book, but I'm not sure if I'm going to get to it before I have to return it. But I do really want to read this book. It's a new release that I'm interested in, and that is The Other Mother. And this is by Rachel M. Harper, and this is published by Counterpoint Press. And this one follows a man who is going off to college. While he's off at college, he's kind of studying away. He wants to figure out more about his birth father, who he hasn't known. And his birth father, I believe, is like a dancer, like a professional dancer. And he meets his estranged grandfather. And when he meets his estranged grandfather, the grandfather tells him, like, oh, you shouldn't be looking into your father, you should be looking into your other mother. And whoa, that sounds like an amazing premise. I'm very intrigued. I definitely want to read this. So I'm gonna try to get to it, but it's also pretty chunky, so we'll see. But I will read this at some point this year. I'm just not sure when, but I have it from the library, so now would be a good time. So that is The Other Mother. And the last book, we made it, y'all, is a graphic novel, and it's Through the Woods. And this is by Emily Carroll, and this is a like story collection, and I believe it's retelling like Gothic stories. So this is the art style there. And I've checked this out once before and then didn't get a chance to read it. I do think this is pretty dark, and there's very little text. It's mostly images. So I'm curious about this. I think it'll be good. I do think technically this is YA, but I think I care less about that in a graphic novel. So that is Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. And that is it. We made it through the first book haul. I hope you're excited about some of these books. I'm excited about all of these books. There's no way I'm going to get to them all next month, so I'm sure they'll be interspersed throughout the rest of the year, but I'm very excited to read them. If you're interested in hearing my thoughts about them, stay tuned for some upcoming videos where I'm going to be reviewing them. So I will see you all soon. Bye!